Okay guys, hope you're well. We're going to be looking at the answers hub. I'm just catching up after Hull. Flick it over. We're up to Dan F, so a little salute to you. Yes, I had a wonderful time on my holidays. Looking forward to the next one. And for those of you who aren't aware, I was away off on a cruise around France and Spain with the little Winker here, and we had a jolly old time of things. So let's have a little look and see what this question is. Can you explain what countries in news will affect which pairs? I.e. today, GB and US are forecasting news. Would that say have an effect on Australia CAD? And wondered for others to write up key. Okay. The big daddy news events are US data. So when it comes to looking at your economic calendar, the only news events you really want to look at are high impact. Okay. Now, things like sort of CPI, non-farm payroll, any interest rates. Now, at the moment, we have parliamentary elections going on in the UK. There's also presidential elections over in Europe and in America, and it's all going to be happening this year. So I'll be keeping a close eye on those as well, for no other reason that they could spike the market when they say the announcement of a vote's going to come in. So my advice on that situation is always the same. If you don't understand it, stay out of it. And when it comes to news trading, if you're trying to preempt the news, it's borderline gambling. Why? Because unless you were in the room when people are making decisions, you have got no idea what the market is going to do. So just trade the aftermath. Now to the question, which news will affect which pairs? Well, kind of the rule of thumb is US data is the main driver, because whether we like it or not, the US dollar is the world currency. So if you've got high impact on the US, it will naturally affect any US pair that's there. So pound USD, euro USD. Now, it can also affect sort of the CAD a little bit. It's not as brutal as it can be, but if you've got a US pair in it or a US baseline in it, it's going to come. Okay. The next one down the pecking order is the pound. So any high impact on the pound, but that's kind of localized to the UK, as is euro data. Now, if you're coming back over onto the US data, there is another way of looking at this. You look to see what the data affects the S&P 500. Now, the S&P 500 will set the tone for other indices. So if you see a surge on the S&P, there's a fair bet it'll come to the FTSE and the DAX, and it'll just filter through. So you can actually start using these things as barometers. And then also you start looking at the Far East news events as well. They normally come in the middle of the night for us. But JPY interest rates has a big effect on what's going on as well. So you can be looking at, say, the Aussie JPY. They have a news announcement, bump, it can flare. Now, does the Australian news affect sort of US? Not really. Does New Zealand data affect the US? Not really. So it doesn't really affect us in the UK either. So the only ones you really want to pay attention to are US data, and then it'll look for pairs that have the US in it. Down the pecking order, look at pound data for European markets. So that's pound euro, pound USD. It can also affect things like pound Australia, that sort of thing, but mainly stick to the majors. Okay. When it comes to news trading, Dan, like I said at the start of this, if you don't understand it, don't trade it. Just trade the aftermath, but trade what you see. You know, if you see a new spike is coming, let the spike come, and then trade either with it or against it, depending on what your bias of the day is. Okay, hope that helps. Catch you soon.